Hello, good afternoon. This is Nady. And yeah, I guess today, as the title suggests, we are going to talk a little bit about Agile and with a little bit of focus on communication and how conversations can drive really impact in the day-to-day and how we do our work. So first, let's get kind of overview of what a start. Okay, perfect. Let's get an interview and first let's tell you a little bit about ourselves. So I'm Nady. I'm a product manager here at Glovo. In the career cluster, my team is called Rewards and Compensation. And usually we try to have all these communication throughout the day to how can you communicate and get something done at the end. And yeah, I think that this is in the essence of being a product manager, but that doesn't mean that the rest of the engineering teams needs to kind of pay a huge attention to that one. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself. How about you, Javi? Welcome.
So, hello everybody. My name is Javi. I'm in the Madrid offices. And yeah, I'm working here as a EPM, Engineering Program Manager, partnering with Courier, with CAP, and with many other clusters in all these cross-cluster initiatives, and always trying to promote the Agile things a lot. So yeah, what about you, Nady? Guy, sorry.
And hi, everybody. This is Guy, and I'm also an engineering program manager attached to the data cluster. And Javi and I and our colleagues in the EPM organization are tasked with promoting Agile practices and Agile sort of mindset within Glovo. So that's something that's on our mind a lot, and we talk about Agile pretty much every day.
Amazing. So I guess one statement that the three of us agreed on to start with is that we believe that effective communication is a foundational Agile principle, and it's key to the success of the software development. That's one important thing that we want to highlight at the beginning. So let's get started maybe. And the overview of what we are going to talk today is mainly about what are the challenges that we face while we are communicating at scale. At scale of such skill that we have here in Glovo and many other companies, communication is really imperative to be planned, well taken care of, and effective as much as we can. And we are going to talk a little bit about how Agile can help address those challenges and make our communications a little bit better. And we have prepared maybe 3 scenarios where we are going to provide some diagnosis and how can we improve the communication in those scenarios. And yeah, I guess at the end we are going to wrap up and have some Q&As if that's so I guess we want to start with why conversations matter. Would you like to tell us about that?
Thank you. Okay, so let's start. Oh, you can drive. Yeah, let's start a little bit by some history. A little once upon a time narrative. So go ahead and change. So in the beginning, once upon a time at Glovo, there was a single team, Oscar and Sasha and a few other people, and they were all in the same place. I think they were in Oscar's, living room or somewhere, his parents' living room. Communication was super easy. Everybody owned everything. Everyone had the shared responsibility for everything. Nobody ever slept or went to the shower or spent any time with their families. They were just single-minded in their focus. And so by necessity and default, the team was agile and they practiced agile communication techniques. Whether they knew it at the time or not, they were agile. However, next slide. Things got difficult right away. Success happened and suddenly everything was bigger. The teams were more numerous. There were clusters. There were specializations. They were distributed in different places. All these acronyms, PMs and EMs and EPMs and TPGMSs and stuff sort of materialized out of nowhere. And the initiatives themselves became really complicated, cross-functional, taking a lot more time and a lot more cycles and involving a lot more teams. And so the question is, how do you communicate? How can you be effective in getting things done, moving from that initial environment to operating at scale? I forget our growth, I think the year before I came in 2021 was enormous in engineering and elsewhere. So that's really what this talk is about, is how to be effective at scale.
Cool. So that's the question that we try to address today is, can Agile solve those challenges and make our communication more effective? And on that one, maybe we can start by reminding ourselves about some principles of the Agile when it comes to communication. So first, keep it close. We try to be close as much as we can together. All the people that are working at the same team or even in different teams, business people, tech people, we try to work every day together so that we can have the same impact all together. So here it's about maximizing our and enriching our conversations. Second, face-to-face communication. So definitely with all the craziness that happened over the past few years, our communication formats have changed drastically. And it's important here to realize how many formats of communications that we have today, how can we use them and how can we kind of shuffle so that we can communicate even better, no matter whether we are in a Zoom or in a room physically together, or we are talking over Slack, emails, no matter what is the format. It's really important that we have a decent amount of communication with enough impact and enough output out of it. A couple of things more that we'd like to remind ourselves with is to try to focus on the prioritization. How can we simplify our work? How can we simplify our work and make it as lean as possible so that we focus on the impact and the problems and the opportunities that we try to seize every day? And lastly, incremental learning. That's something I guess Narek has been talking about today. How can we drive at regular intervals, or even if they are irregular, the essence here is that we have to keep incrementing on the values that we create. We have to start at some point and keep improving from this point onwards. So that's a little bit of kind of reminders for all of us. What do we need with the Agile communication and what are the principles revealed behind them? So I guess now maybe to recap and for the scenarios that we are going to start diagnosing now, one thing to look at, what would happen with the communication failing? I think one important thing is when we fail to communicate our priorities to each other, we kind of disconnect here. The priorities are going to be different between product, tech, business, operations, marketing. It's going to be different everywhere. And we wouldn't have this priorities and focus that we try to maintain to move our business, all of us together. It's one business at the end that we try to move. It's not more than one business. Second, when we feel also to kind of be open with our assumptions, what do we assume and what we know as facts? Sometimes this would lead to disconnection in the expectations. If I am, for example, if I'm a product manager and there has been some assumption that I've made that if we did this, this will happen. But this assumption is not validated or it's not communicated in a better way, this will lead to some sort of disconnection. And third, which sometimes happen between the teams, inside a team, between team and another team, which is that we cannot agree on something. This usually leads to blockers, delays, maybe some frustration in the workspace, something that we try to avoid all the time. But inevitably, this would happen if our communication failed. So maybe let's take it a little bit more practical. What are these communications and what are these scenarios? Let's check out maybe the first scenario. And here, Javi, do you want to tell us a little bit more here?
Yeah, I can jump here. So we have been doing some investigations here in Glovo, and we have reviewed a lot of grooming sessions, and we have found this one that maybe it can put some light on this. So let's see if we can see it.
All right. So shall I play the video?
Yeah, please.
Cool. So that's a video about this scenario. Let's see what happens.
I really don't know if the sound is working.
Nope.
So if it's not working, maybe we can roll it out here between Guy, Nady, and myself. Hey everybody. So I think that we are here in order to prioritize our backlog.
Amazing. Let's do this.
Yeah, so I think that we have a really important feature that it's belonging to the engineering OKRs and is the monolith extraction that we should prioritize this for sure. It's key.
Oh, cool. Let's do it along with our upcoming feature, and let's do both.
Come on, no. This will not work
Why?
at all. Yeah, you know that if something has to be prioritized, it should be monolith extraction.
But with all due respect to the monolith or the monolith structure, I think well, our new feature it's predicted to drive millions of profits, and we are in really bad need for profits. How can we kind of prioritize this tech debt from the monolith? Is it the real thing, the monolith, or just a symbolic?
No, of course it's the monolith. Come on, everybody knows the monolith. So at the end, we need some room of improvement also in the tech side.
Yeah, it's not a favorite, but I'm really sorry. I don't think that we'll be able. We have really commitments on the profits this quarter. We have to deliver.
Come on, we should escalate this.
Well, yeah, let's escalate this. I can escalate this as well. If you want to escalate, let's.
No. I mean, I can escalate on your escalation. So yeah, it's no problem.
All right, let's build a pyramid.
What was that, Javi?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, maybe we can now ask people there if they have detected any issue in the communication itself.
Anyone?
Nothing? Okay, so yeah, at the end, I think that
Oh.
Shall I continue?
Yep. Just for you, Javi, if you didn't hear out, I think that what he was trying to say is that there was something missing in the conversation, which is why do we need to prioritize? And everyone was just arguing, and there were a couple of assumptions. So I guess the why was really missing here.
Yeah. So yeah, at the end, that's it. So I think that we reached the point. So if we move to the next slide. So what we are missing here is what are we going to do? That in this case is clear. So we wanted to extract some of the endpoints that we currently have, but the why is missing. Okay, and in many times we are struggling to get the why. So we can say, for example, that extracting out from the monolith might decrease the build time, so we can deliver faster. We can say that it will decrease the database load, for example, or the CPU load, or that people will be happier because they will develop in a, let me say, clearer way, because the complexity of the code will be lower. So at the end, we have to search this kind of whys, but we also have to put a lot of focus in the needs, okay? Because it's different to say, okay, I'm going to extract these endpoints and I need 12 engineers in 12 months. That's saying, okay, I would like to extract these just 2 endpoints in 1 sprint, okay? So at the end, these 3 points are quite important, but not only in the tech side, okay? So I can imagine that, for example, if you want to go to a Madonna show, you also have to know the why do you want to go there and where it is the show, just to take the train, and because maybe if it's in the US, you will not go there, okay? So at the end, feelings is different than priorities, because you can have different feelings that you have to search for the impact, the real impact with objective data, that many times this objective data is missing. So many times we have to partner with a data team or with a UX team, with many things in Glovo that can help us to get this why. And having these 3 points, the what, the why, and the needs, will lead us to have like understandable communication between product operation and engineering, and then set priorities. Because in many of the cases, we are losing this same language, okay? So we are speaking the same language, but at the end, we are not able to compare between things. And the second learning here is the transparency. So if we are transparent and we let everybody knows this impact, this why, this needs, this effort, then everybody will be partnering with us and everybody will be pushing in the same direction. So yeah, at the end, it's not only in this conversation, but we have to let everybody know about the goals themselves. So yeah. Okay, so here we have the sloth. I really don't know if you know that the sloth was the previous engineering mascot. And I like it because it's slow, but it also knows the direction where we want to go, okay? So at the end, building these communications skills takes time, okay? Because we have to research a lot, we have to partner with many teams, we have to make a lot of research in order to get these 3 points. And this is why we have to book some time for that. So I know that we are all with a lot of work, we are all with a lot of things to do, but at the end of the day, if we take this time to research, the communication will be smoother and everybody will go in the same direction and pushing. So yeah, I think that taking this time is also key, and it will also change with the time, because at the end you can have some reasons now, and if you go for them and you research and nail them down, then the reasons will be powerful, you know. And yeah, at the end, these backlog grooming sessions are done every sprint. So you have to take into account that one thing that you think that should be prioritized now can be prioritized in the next sprint. So you don't have to be stubborn, but you have to collect all this information and write it down. I don't know if in Jira, in one pager, in Confluence, we have many ways to document those things in order to let everybody know. So in order to this transparency that we were talking about, but also in order to, in previous iterations, refine that information, okay? And the last point is that, of course, we have to partner with our counterparts, with product, with engineering, with operations, because at the end, we are here to push in the same direction. And many times I think that we are missing that part, that product is really focused in the product features, engineering is really focused in engineering things. And at the end, for sure, we have to go all in the same direction, and having this understanding of the what, the why, and the needs will for sure improve that communication. So I am done with this first scenario. So maybe we should go to the second one. So Guy, your turn.
So let me start by saying I have never been a product manager. However, I have been in the role of the person who has sprung a surprise on a product manager when they went to the demo or they went to the feature release and discovered that the requirements weren't quite the things that we delivered. Something happened along the way that was seemed like a minor thing. We made some changes and then we said, here you go. And unfortunately, the response was not what we expected or hoped for. So let me give you just a high level scenario, and then I'm going to give you some examples from my own personal experience. So you have a situation where you were given requirements. Everybody agrees at the beginning of a sprint, for example, that yes, we're going to deliver these things, and here's the technical implementation that we will use on the team. Product manager's happy, everybody is happy, they all go away, the team starts working in the sprint, and then suddenly realize that the requirements and the technical implementation don't quite fit. We can't quite get the requirements in with this implementation, so we're in a hurry, we want to deliver because we're gas, we're all about velocity. So we make a decision, we're going to just change the requirements a little bit to fit our implementation, not a problem, we move on, and then we're ready to deliver. Of course, we didn't have time to inform the product manager so that he or she could tell their manager. And so, well, it's okay. Nothing will be wrong. Actually, back up one. And then you give the demo and everybody is speechless. Not because they're overwhelmed by your brilliance, but because that's not what they asked for. And as the meme shows, you know, from engineering perspective, who cares whether the button is 1 pixel or 2 pixels or wherever it is, notwithstanding that we did, you know, 6 weeks of experimentation that said actually it had to be right there to actually make an impact. So let me give you an actual concrete example of something that I did that had the same result. I worked on a project at Apple that was extremely complicated. It was across multiple platforms and involved all the languages that Apple, the app is localized in. We had a requirement for text. The text in a certain language it wrapped, which was not in the requirement, which we could not do text wrapping. So we thought, not a problem, we'll reduce the font size. And then no problem solved. Unfortunately, since we are not UX experts, because we don't know these things, all we see is that it doesn't wrap. What we don't know is that millions of dollars of research have shown that if you go one font size down, a big percentage of your customers can no longer read whatever it is that it says. And of course, this went on and was not caught until QA, which then threatened the actual release and had to go back for rework. And the trouble here is that there were two teams whose only reason for existence was to deal with exactly that problem. But hey, we were in sprint. We're just going to do it, right? It was an easy, quick fix, and we just did it and forgot about it. So that was a potential disaster of my career at Apple, but fortunately was saved by people with skills. So let's go to the next slide and see, what are some lessons from this? So there's this thing called ad hoc project management or ad hoc change management. That's kind of what I want to talk about is change management, is what to do when circumstances require you to make some adjustments or make some changes. That's supposed to be one of the virtues of Agile methodology, right? That you can make changes on the fly, you can do things quickly. However, when Oscar and the small team are sitting in a room, this works really well. You can make a unilateral decision because everybody's of a shared mind, right? They talk all the time. They understand expectations. On the scale that we've become and the scales that I've worked in elsewhere, that doesn't work. And when you make sort of ad hoc decisions on the fly to just keep going, you more often than not end up with surprises, and they're usually unpleasant. And what you thought you were saving in time, you end up doing in rework or in having to go back and do redesign. So what I'm going to suggest is that even though it seems counterintuitive for those of us who are doing Agile, in Agile, you should have a change management process. And that should be actually formally stated between the team and the stakeholders, also internal to the team, but also to the stakeholders. Why does this seem counterintuitive? Well, how is having a plan and giving agreement and doing all this, how can that possibly be Agile? One thing we should remember, and I think this is a common misconception, is that Agile is kind of like the freedom to do whatever you want in order to just go fast, right? That I think is the conception of Agile. But that actually isn't what Agile is about. It can be, but Agile at scale is really about guaranteeing the success of the initiative, raising the odds of succeeding, particularly as things get more and more complicated. Because those of you who know the history of Agile, Agile emerged out of a history of failure to deliver software that met the expectations of stakeholders. So the foundational principles of Agile were we should do whatever it takes to make sure we deliver, right, the incremental improvement or incremental work, but also that the stakeholders get what they want and they get it in the way that they expected and that there are no surprises. So one of the ways to do this is to replace assumptions, which all of us are guilty of making, with actual explicit agreements, which should be written down, to be honest, somewhere, whether it's in Confluence, whether it's on a document, somewhere when you're starting a relationship with a product manager, with an engineering team. After your charter as a team, you should say, okay, here is how we're going to handle change, right? It could be very simple. If you need to make a change, ask the PM, just Slack them or call them on the phone or do something to notify someone who can make that decision. If they can't make the decision, then it's on them to take it to someone who can make a decision. Remove blockers. So have a plan, but also remove blockers and ambiguities. Ask people, do you understand? I mean, continually be engaging in conversations to make sure people are clear about what they're doing. Stand-ups should be partly about this. Stand-ups are about saying, are you blocked? It's a conversation. How is everyone this morning? Are you blocked? What are you working on? You're not blocked? Excellent. Do you have any changes that you think you need to make from the requirements? Yes? Good, let's go check. Let's follow our process and find out whether it's okay to make that change. Ultimately, taking these steps, and I'll go into a little more detail, will reduce the chances of unpleasant surprises, and then the rework that might be required to do that. Go ahead. So I want to call out 5 things. I would like you to take away from this sort of some concrete, practical things that you can do. This is something that actually I struggle with myself because I've been doing this so long that I've fallen back into making assumptions about things. But having a communication plan, an actual explicit one, is I think a really critical aspect of any good Agile practice. And it really is, I think, the best way to avoid people not knowing what is going on, no matter how far away from you they happen to be. This is not new to Agile, but I think it needs to be brought back into Agile because I think we sometimes forget about it. A communication plan simply says, who do we need to communicate with about what? And when do we need to do this? How often? What's the cadence? And how should we do it? What is their preferred mode of communication? Right? And it's simple to write this down. You may have to update the people because people come and go, but nevertheless, then you know at a glance, oh, it's Monday, I need to tell these people what's going on so that they're never surprised. Personal anecdote, when I worked at Apple, my assumption was that these weekly things that reports that we gave of the status of work streams, they would go up to director and VP, but we imagined they're never going to pay attention to any of this. No, very wrong. I got messages on a weekend from directors saying, why is this not, what is the data? What's the mitigation for this thing that you said is blocked? When is it going to happen? And so I thought, oh my goodness. Okay, so I realized that in an organization that's functionally well, that's agile and where people are communicating, even at the upper levels of management, they're paying attention and they expect to receive information at a regular basis, and it has to be a certain way. And then they act on that. Now, in these cases, leaders act to unblock you. I mean, this is, to me, is a theme of my entire career that no one should ever be blocked. And so anything that causes a blocker needs to be communicated rapidly. So then adopt formal change management rules or processes. And that's simply, it could be as easy as answering the question, if I have to make a change, what do I do? Who do I go to? What's the plan? And it should be at the IC level, the EM level. The product manager also should know if there's a technical implementation problem, who do I go to in my own organization? How far do I need to go to authorize a change? But that should be known. We shouldn't have to figure that out on the fly, right? I should be able to go to a document and say, okay, we have this problem. We go talk to this person. They will solve it for us. Again, in Glovo, now that we have to deal with security and privacy and legal and GDPR and all these things, it's important to know as you're doing your project, if you run into these issues, who am I going to go get answers from? So having change management rules, having them formalized is, I think, a really critical tool. This is the one I thought was going to cause a lot of scandal, and that is conducting daily check-ins about change. But in my own mind, this is as simple as setting a reminder on your calendar that says at 9 o'clock every morning, I'm going to get on Slack and ask the EM or the PM, has anything changed that we should know about? And the answer is either yes, in which case tell me what it is, and then we'll go into our plan, or no, and then we go, great, talk to you tomorrow about the same topic. But this is something to avoid surprises and to avoid assuming that everything is going wonderful. We should just ask. It's that simple, just a quick conversation. And after a while, it just becomes, yeah, we expect it. Why didn't you contact me at 9 asking me about changes? Oh, sorry, I meant to. So assess and document the impact of the changes. So don't just agree on changes and then say we had a verbal agreement or it's in Slack somewhere. If you're going to make a deviation from requirements, put it somewhere, put it in Confluence, put it in Jira, actually, since that's where the work is being done. On such and such a date, we agreed with these people to do the following change in requirements. And the requirements, this should also be reflected in the requirements documentation, which we hope exists somewhere, right? And we won't go into that piece. But At the end of the day, and to reiterate what both Javi and Nady are going to say, we're all in this together. This is a joint effort. And Agile started because there was a time when the business wanted something, they would throw some requirements, or slide them under a door or something, and engineers would look at these, they would have a conversation, they think, well, we think this is this, and we'll go and build something, and periodically the business might ask, when am I going to get this? And then you'd say later, in time. Any day now this will arrive. But this was siloed, there was no communication, and then at the end of the day, I think it was 70% of the time or so, what they got was not what they wanted at all. So Agile exists to avoid that, and we have to remember that the root, if you go back to the principles, it talks about face-to-face communication, and literally product managers and engineering teams being literally in the same room at the same desk and having these conversations just repeatedly. We can't do that at scale as often as we'd like, but we can adopt the mindset that this is a joint thing that we're trying to do together and accomplish. Therefore, just like any good relationship, we should be talking over and over and often and early. So then we end up with a shared changed unicorn, which is then in everybody's heart. Everybody's on the same page. Next. So, final scenario.
Okay, let's add some more spice here. So maybe a first show of hands. How many people here have been blocked by another team before? Okay. How many people are currently blocked by another team? Wonderful. Okay, so cool. So on the third scenarios it's about what do we do when we're blocked and there's nothing to do. So let's say once upon a day or a daily stand-up, an engineer have shared with the team, hello, we have been blocked by alpha team and I have already communicated this blocker with them. They know all the details, but this blocker is going to disable us from rolling out our flagship product. So it's a crisis. So for now, it's been communicated properly. The engineer has been doing this with full ownership, has been trying to communicate with the other team. What could happen is, in this scenario, that the engineer would come back and they are busy with something else. They are not going to help us. So what I would do as a PM is I would try to negotiate with them, communicate with them, and see if we can get this prioritized with them. So here, the team would start to go in a panic mode. We are blocked. There's no way to get help, and we'll try our best to get unblocked. What would happen as a PM, some cases, and this is what is going wrong in this scenario, that it seems that we are not going to get this help. I've tried to communicate the impact, the urgency, tried to create this state of urgency with the other team, but unfortunately, they have different plans. They are not going to help us. So the engineering team would try to find a solution. We can maybe find a workaround. We can do this. We can compromise in some tech debt. We can find some time extra. We can postpone our rollout, all these kind of situations because we have to get something done. So that would end up as a kind of a workaround, and the team would agree on the same day. We promise, we vow that we are going to tackle this tech debt in the future. So this is I guess this happens, at least this happened with me many times. So I guess one thing that the communication can help here is to escalate. At this scenario, there was no way that this team can get the help from the other team. And the other alternative is to compromise either on the quality or on the timeline, on the business impact. So that's one thing that we try to avoid all the time. And before I go and explain all about escalation, let's first try to crack some myth about the escalation. Escalation, the way I see it, it's escalation. This is an escalator. We try to go from one point that's a little bit low to another point a little bit higher using an escalator. This is what means an escalation, even in software. It doesn't mean different thing. It's you're trying to build a momentum for a situation. not trying to do this. We are not trying to fight each other. I know, and I'm realistic that this is what happens with many teams. Some people have misconceptions about the escalation. I guess that one important message here is that escalation is about situation. It's not about an individual. Some people can do it again as a person, which is that's the way that they think about. But I believe in the sense of a workspace, our objectives have to be common. We are not here to kind of report someone to someone. We are not here to kind of create a mess for another team. I don't think that this is the main intent for someone. However, with a lot of drama in a project, even if it's a really complex one, your team have been doing a lot of amazing things, and you hate to see this blocked. Sometimes emotions can get in between. Sometimes we are not in the right state to take a decision, or how can we communicate this better? So how can we escalate a situation but not an individual? I guess really two things. If I would start with the first one, before you escalate, please prepare yourself. Three main takeaways here. Get your motives right. What do you want to do? Is your objective is to tell Guy's manager that he's been blocking our team for months now, and I want Guy to be punished? Or I have a situation in my team and I need to find a solution. So that's one important thing. Let's get our motives right. What do we need to change, and what is the objective of this escalation? Again, to reiterate, the escalation in my personal definition, it's building a momentum for a situation that's really, really bad, but you're trying to build this momentum so that you get the attention and the rationale behind, okay, we have to fix it. We have to get someone else. The decision is now not in your hands. It's with someone else. And we need to build this momentum and all the artifacts to make this clear and make sense to everyone. Okay, we can change our plan. We can accept this. So if I would get back maybe here, and that was your suggestion, Guy, I think rather than fighting and pulling the guns, bringing up everyone who can escalate the situation with me, my manager, or maybe not my manager, someone else that I know they have enough political influence in the team that they can move it, which is a little bit of a workaround the escalation. That's not the situation. I think what you suggested is that both of the teams writing down the escalator to the other point. And I think it makes sense at the end. So getting back to what can we prepare ourselves with? First, to get our motives right. Second, to get our emotions right. As I said as well, these situations are really bad. We are all humans. We get impacted when something goes against our expectations. We have to realize this, but what's most importantly, we have to reset our intents first with the motives and our emotions. We have to drive this as best as possible so that we don't go somewhere wrong. Many things that can be just said without intention can be interpreted on the other side in a really, really wrong way. You don't want to go in that sense. And whenever it will go on the sense, he said, they said, she said, it's not going to move. And third, to get curious. On the other side, what should I know? Why do you think, why do they think they cannot help us? So maybe if I gathered enough information and context about the other side, maybe our team can help out. Maybe our engineering team can find a third solution. Maybe we can find a middle ground if we knew about each other domain and space. So in that one, in the preparation, we try to first reset our intentions, our objectives, and try to do this right. So that was about the first one. The second one is how can we establish a clear process for escalation? And it doesn't have to sound that whenever we say escalation, we hear the gun triggers. It doesn't have to be a really serious situation. It can be really chill. So first, gather and document. Make a clear brief about the situation that you're in. Make sure that you are clear in what is blocked, why, how, and how this is going to impact the business. And second, let's try to communicate this. On that one, as I just briefed, let's try to pick who are we going to communicate. There are two types of people that we can escalate to. The people who have political influence and the people who can really help. You choose. So I guess in that sense, we need to build the momentum but for the people that understand it and then interpret it in a better way so that they can take another step. And third, it it's not just it's not just a trigger that you are going to pull and that's it. I have escalated it and then I'm going to have a really good night's sleep. No, we have to follow up. We have to circle back. Even if the whole situation is not resolved, we need to keep sharing the updates. We need to close the full loop. It can end up with a really happy scenario. It can end up with not so great scenario. Whatever it ends up with, make sure that you close the loop and communicate back with all the stakeholders that has been involved. So yeah, one thing on the, yeah, I think we are going to wrap up, but one last thing on the escalation, I think it has been really, it has a lot of misconceptions. People would think about it as kind of a punishment or a way to rebuttal someone or to get back at someone. That's not the case. Be pragmatic about your work, be sympathetic with the other side, and understand what your team needs to kind of move. Most of the time, the escalation is really, really personal thing to do. And I think that this is the main reason why escalation is having this kind of reputation in the workspace. So yeah, that was about the third scenario. To wrap up here, I think we have summarized some key takeaways. First one is about how communication is a foundational agile software principle and how it can drive really good efficiency in our day-to-day. And when the company gets bigger, and I think that this is something all of us are experiencing here, we are getting bigger every day, not just on the team size, but on the complexity of the projects. Things can be across many, many different functions and many different teams. And we have to kind of manage this communication smoothly. We don't have to panic. Third is make sure that you have the proper conversations with the proper context. Make sure that whenever you discuss something that you want to drive, you know why, you know what you want to drive, and what is the need that's being resolved behind that one. We're not just doing this, as Javi said, it's based on our feelings that this is really important, but we need to be very concise, very critical against each other in a friendly and safe space. And to manage with a plan, I think that Guy already have shared his experiences here. Make sure that whatever changes, assumptions that you have are well documented, well managed as a change, and well communicated to all the stakeholders that are involved. Here, we want to avoid those surprises. And yeah, finally, escalation. Let's try to rethink about what the escalation is. What are what's the dynamic of an escalation between the people? It's not a person-to-person situation when it comes to escalation. In what I see, it's a business situation that we try to move something from an A to B, but we need an escalator. So I guess that's it. I guess, yeah, that's it. Maybe. Okay, thank you so much, Glovo and friends.
Hey, I think this talk, all of them, Javi, stay 1 second. All of them have been very interesting, but I wasn't expected in a tech conference to be receiving learnings from communicating better with the teams. I think this is very important. Also, my key takeaways will be with the part of the assumptions. This is something that I will grab with me. The other thing is separating the people from the problems. No? So I think this is very nice. I have a question. Do we have information we can find on this, like okay, thank you so much. So